Hey, hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Dan Beirne, an actor you may have seen in the second season of Fargo, or on the sitcoms The Guest Book or Workin Moms, or the delightful web series Space Riders Division Earth, or the feature film Great, Great, Great. This year, you'll see him in White Lie, the new psychological thriller from Calvin Thomas and Yona Lewis, in the FX series Mrs. America, and as the young, weird William Lyon Mackenzie King in Matthew Rankin's surrealistic biopic The 20th Century, for which Dan just received the Vancouver Film Critics Circle Award for Best Actor, and which is currently playing in Montreal and Winnipeg, with additional screenings in Edmonton at the Metro Cinema on January 24th, 26th, and 29th, and in Toronto at the Royal on January 27th, and the Paradise Cinema on February 12th. Dan picked Monrovia, Indiana, the most recent work from Frederick Wiseman, whose observational documentaries stretch back over more than half a century, from such landmark studies as Titicut Follies in high school to the more recent In Jackson Heights and Ex Libris, the New York Public Library. Monrovia, Indiana, like all of Wiseman's films, is an examination of a structure from many, many angles. In this case, rather than a dance company or a missile facility, the subject is a small town in the heartland, dotted with farms, churches, diners, and schools. There's no plot, just people, presented entirely without comment or emphasis, which makes it difficult to synopsize, but easy to talk about. This is Someone Else's Movie.
I wanted to choose something that I felt like I had a foothold in the catalog of the artist.
Okay.
Wiseman is just someone that I feel like I've spent a lot of time with and can talk about pretty confidently, I guess.
So, for people who haven't seen it, because it turns out it's a lot harder to find than I thought it was.
Yeah.
I just, for some reason, I thought it was an older title, which is weird. I thought it was 2014, 15, but it was released last year.
It's his most recent, and possibly his last. I mean, he's almost 90, and still making a film every year.
Yeah, he's not going to stop.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, that'd be great. Because he's still
about his nursing home. He'll make films about whatever else happens,
which he's already done. I think.
I assume,
yeah.
He'll be in it, not being in it somehow. That'll be the new thing.
Yeah, he'll still be credited doing sound and editing and directing.
Exactly.
But he's always been hard to find. I have found in my life until the last couple of years when Canopy's been released, and it's like a streaming network tied to the library. And he's always been someone who's very much a library type of guy. He's always supported by PBS. He's very much that sort of 60s socialist style.
Public trust.
Public trust, right, exactly. And so this what I would call a revelation, really. You always kind of think the library is going to be a step behind or whatever, and then when they sort of take a leap forward like this, it's like, this is incredible. So it's like his whole library is basically up there.
Yeah,
and that's kind of I've never seen in my life.
There was a wave. I was still covering home video, so couldn't have been any later than 2013, but Zipporah Films released his catalog on DVD themselves.
They did.
His company put out DVDs, and they're now doing Blu-rays. You can buy them directly from the website. They're not cheap. There's $29.95 for a DVD, $39.95 for a Blu-ray. And most of them were burned, which was really disappointing. They're homemade, which means they won't last. But I was wondering if that's maybe just a sign of how little demand he thinks there are for his films. That he makes them himself and sells them to people?
I know. I think, because I used to look for them as well. And back when I looked for them, Zipporah was selling them from their website, but they were selling them VHS for $75 a piece. The sort of rental pricing that you would see. And I was like, well, that's ridiculous. Like, he's shut down any market that there was. But yeah, it does. He does seem to sort of operate in an alternate universe where he's just like, no, I do these things and they will air on PBS and that will be their life. And but I think they're so. I just think they're so vital.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this one, strangely enough, Monrovia feels less so, I guess, to me than the others.
Less vital.
Well, after the run he had of In Jackson Heights and Ex Libris, where you have these incredibly detailed drill downs into ecosystems, right? I mean, his stuff is always about institutional function.
Yeah.
And Monrovia, Indiana comes out, and it is equally attentive and exhaustive. It's a portrait of a community of what is it, 97.3% white.
Yeah, under 2,000 people.
Yeah, tiny small town heartland place.
Yeah.
It is Americana in a nutshell. It's also it's an apolitical study, and there were points in this film that struck me. I mean, he never puts his own politics into anything. He always lets the material tell the story. The institutional horror of Titicut Follies coming through in that shot of a cigarette dangling over a feeding tube, which just goes on and on and on. And you get the sense of the filmmaker containing outrage at that. And that was, 1965, right? One of his first.
Yeah.
It was his first film.
I think it was.
And here we have a movie that feels like it is in concert with the polyglot, the diverse world of In Jackson Heights, where I think the one trivia point I took away from that is that more languages are spoken in Jackson Heights than anywhere else in the world. It's the Tower of Babel. Everyone there is from somewhere else. And,
yes.
And it's harmonious and it's cranky, and there are, civic issues and people fighting over zoning, but everyone lives together. And then Ex Libris, which is this portrait of the New York library system as a fount of knowledge, but also of security and safety and education. And even though at the end we see that it's catering to the rich people of New York because it's New York and that's what you do, there's still hope for everyone else. And then there was this film, and it's about some people I don't ever feel I really got to know. And I felt like he was either trying to avoid a political statement here because this is Trump land. This is the opposite to the two worlds of those two films. And then there's just a bunch of stuff that happens, which struck me. It's not that I didn't like it, but I for the first time watching it last night, I realized I was trying to understand why he made it. Yeah. And I didn't get an answer.
I felt the exact same the first time I watched it.
Okay.
I felt kind of angry. I saw it at the Hot Dog Cinema, and I felt upset that he didn't. That it felt like surely now is the time to at least say something, and I felt, but I felt haunted by that reaction, and over time challenged by it, and I rewatched it for this show, and I felt so much more something that I've felt about him in the past, which is I heard him speak one time, and he did say this very thing that you said, which was that he doesn't put any of his politics into his films, and I just immediately was like, you scammer, you are lying, because we know what it takes to make a film. You are making hundreds of thousands of decisions. Yeah, everything is intentional, and we had just watched his film Primate, which ends. It ends with a monkey being put into space, essentially put into a
capsule.
A capsule, but also it's a plane that is doing parabolas.
Oh, right.
And
the vomit comet.
The vomit comet, exactly, to simulate anti-gravity. And you've got this. I believe there's a scientist talking about the purpose of science and all this stuff, and then you just cuts back and forth to this plane doing these absurd maneuvers, and this helpless monkey being and it's to the very idea that wasn't intentional and full of statement was just absurd to me. And so in rewatching this, I do think that there is statement in there, and it doesn't engage in the debate of what is currently going on. It doesn't engage in headlines, but it operates very specifically within the context of America. It's I think it's so purposeful that it comes in contrast to In Jackson Heights, or I think it's the next one, or two movies later. I think that is part of what he's saying with it. And I think what I respond to so much is that statement is left so much up to us, and we are allowed to fill in the huge amount of gaps that he's left for us to fill in. And that I just find so amazingly, for a film where nothing happens, infinitely rewatchable.
Yeah. I do want to take another look at it. This is one of those, I realized I hadn't seen it. I missed it at TIFF because I think someone else jumped on it first, but also it was one of those situations where the film was so long. This constantly happens, anything over 110 minutes is almost impossible to schedule at the last minute. I can't just go, oh, it's playing over here, because it knocks off two other things that I'm supposed to be doing.
That's right.
And then you end up promising yourself you'll catch up to it later, and then it comes and goes so quickly, and it's long, and you don't get to it. And I usually make it out for every Wiseman. I usually get there, and this time it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
So I feel like I do want to watch it again, and it's...
Well, like, here's one thing that like jumped out at me even in the first 5 minutes. It opens with shots of like the sky and cattle and stuff. But then the first scene we go to is Bible study, and they're talking about Genesis, which is good because it's the beginning of the film. But specifically in Genesis, they're talking about the word tribulations, and he's sort of defining it and this kind of thing. And what the sort of phrase they end on, the sort of like conclusion they make at the end of their Bible study is, we messed up. We brought the tribulations upon ourselves. Right. And it's like, there's no mistaking the statement there. We're in Trump country. It's like, it's a county that's voted Republican for the last 25 years or something. It's like so red.
Do you think they are aware at this point that they've brought this? That Trump is bad? Had it sunk in yet when the film was being made? Because it feels like people are still insisting that this is
that Trump is good. Yes, but like this is wise. It's the Wiseman's like perspective. The sort of like the like, you know, that's possibly a version of themselves in the future, what they will say about themselves or whatever, or it's what liberals will say about what Republicans should feel about themselves or something like that.
The endless conversation, the endless arguments back and forth. I mean, we're recording this on the day that the impeachment vote is happening. And
that's right.
People are pretty much dug in on this. Nobody's going to be swayed by what happens today. You either believe it should be going on, or you believe that the poor man is being railroaded for just doing his job. Because social media is a hellscape, and that's the world that we live in now, where you're being yelled at in all directions, at all sides, all the time. Wiseman's refusal to acknowledge the political context, I suppose, in which everything takes place, just saying that he doesn't. I mean, of course, all art is political, and as you say, the choices he makes about what to keep and what to throw away are inherently a perspective. But you see something else too that occurred to me about Monrovia is that they're just not on the coast. They're not in it. They're not interacting with it. You know, like the repercussions from the things that are happening in government in America will hit them weeks or months or days, like way down the line.
Yes. And
right now they're just living their lives and doing what they can.
Yes.
And that was the thing that, you know, the idea that the pace of small town life hasn't really changed, and that they're still getting bogged down in the minutiae of you know, board meetings and city councils, and people are getting married and people are being buried, and all of this is happening. A dog gets its tail amputated. And even that is something that occurs completely without context. I mean, I know a dog that had his tail removed, and it was because of cancer, so sure. But it's a boxer, and we're used to seeing them with cropped tails, so we're left to wonder if it's a vanity operation, but the dog is too old, so that can't be it. I'm just looking for something to grab onto. I just need an anchor. And the idea that Wiseman produces nothing to ground these stories or to explain them further. There's the old guy at the diner talking about his operation, and all of his friends are being really sympathetic, which is lovely. And then later someone else mentions a guy they knew had his gallbladder removed. Is that the same guy? Is that what that is? No, you'd recover from that faster. You're just constantly, or I was rather, just constantly wanting to know more, which obviously is the goal of any filmmaker. Yeah. But also it felt, I don't know, maybe it's my own I was trying to figure this out in real time. Like, is this my own bias against Heartland people that I'm skeptical of everything I see unless they prove themselves to me?
Yeah.
Because I didn't have any of these issues in Jackson Heights,
Right.
and that gave me equally nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a survey of a place.
Yeah. With
yeah.
with no further context for any of the scenes that we see.
That's right. Yeah, I wonder what that is. I saw one reaction. It was a comment on, I forget what page it would have been on, but it was a direct response to the film, and it was someone saying, "I live in a place like this, and this is so accurate because of how little the discussion is happening." It's like, I know that we feel like this should be full of politics, but these towns are not, and so like that's why it's made this way, and that's why it's correct in the sense that it just reflects the sheer quietness of a place that we, as outsiders, view as like as if it were like clandestine, full of clandestine machinations, and reasons for the strife that it's causing us on the outside.
Yeah. I mean, I think about all of the New York Times pieces about, we went and interviewed Trump supporters at a restaurant, and this is the place they would go, except no one seems to be particularly activated about it.
That's right.
And that's obviously because Wiseman just plops himself down and doesn't ask questions and doesn't pester people.
Yeah.
And he just captures life, which maybe that's his comment as well. Maybe this is his grand statement. It's like, just people.
They're just people, and also the things which are separate from the people that are causing what is, realistically like the downfall of this current system that we've come to
Western
enjoy.
Society.
Yeah,
sure.
Like there's no intention behind that. It's like merely like a sort of collective force of nature, like a thing that has swept up people, and it has no appearance on the individual when viewed from a sort of like the perspective of a wanderer.
Right.
You can't see it. You can't go to Trump country and see it unless you go to these like sticker shows where they show these decals, and it's like these statements, these horrific statements that are just surrounding people.
To feeling revulsion.
Yeah.
At that. I mean, we don't see a rally. We don't see voting. We don't see any of that stuff.
Right.
We see the daily lives. It's what was it? The sense that, you don't get the sense that people are just going to start shouting, "Build the wall" at the camera. Mm-hmm. There's no hostility towards Wiseman's presence, which right away should tell you that things are more complicated, right? Because he is, he's a New York filmmaker. He's absolutely an enemy.
Yeah.
And yet, I guess at this point, he's just, I was going to say he's aged into somebody who looks pleasant and non-threatening, but he's always kind of been like that. Like D.A. Pennebaker was the rock star.
Right.
Of the era when they were younger. He was the one with the ridiculous hats and the camera on his shoulder running around. Wiseman just sort of showed up, did his thing. And as far as I know, he never really, there were the lawsuits over Titicut Follies, but nobody involved in high school seemed to be terribly upset about that portrait that he painted, even though it is one of the most depressing social studies he ever shot. Yeah.
And Law and Order is pretty horrific also. Yeah. It makes me think of. Do you ever see those documentaries about Christo that the Maisels made?
Oh yeah.
And his wife Jean something, and they talked. There's this like beautiful scene where they're talking about how their art, a huge part, half of their art is engaging with the community and getting the community's permission, because it takes so much permission to wrap up a bridge or whatever, and. I found that so sort of admirable, because I don't have that. that ability to sort of talk with people and get them on my side. I just want to present them with something and hope they like it.
Yeah. I mean, I assume that's how most art works.
Well, that's
You don't go for consultations.
Right. But then you see the work like that, and when they explain that that's part of their art is to engage, it's like, of course, like we need to do these things in groups, and I think Wiseman is a master at that, just getting people to like him and let him into their space, and I'm so suspicious of it that it feels like, is he sending envoys? Is he sending people that aren't him to do these things? I have trouble envisioning the ghost of Wiseman behind the camera or huddled in the corner with headphones on, because it's so such an aberration or such an abnormality in the community.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And you would think at this point, it's like chase producers on 60 Minutes. You would send someone out to get the lay of the land first. Especially if you're going to make a film of this length in such a short window of time.
Yes.
Clint Eastwood makes a movie a year because he likes to go home after lunch.
Right.
Like, it's not like he's there for 12 hours a day.
Yeah. And you can tell.
Yeah, I think so. But movie a year. Right?
A movie a year.
And so, and then here's Frederick Wiseman going out and making a movie a year.
I
And
know.
his movies...
He doesn't direct actors either.
No, but he's with purpose. His absence is present.
Yeah.
But he's also turning out films that speak more about America in the moment than Eastwood's films are, for whatever fictional, dressings they use. I want to watch Monrovia, Indiana again.
Yeah.
I have no interest in revisiting most of Clint Eastwood's movies in the last decade.
I mean, I feel I feel like you can rewatch the mattress sale. There's this brilliant mattress sale where they go to a school or something, and there's this salesman in there, and he is talking about the most disgusting stuff. He holds up a jar full of yellow liquid that says this is how much a human being sweats in a night.
And I believe that's scientifically accurate.
I believe it too. It looks like urine, but I believe it. He is the reason Christopher Guest exists. Like, he is, he has the sort of the self-seriousness and the perfect kind of compelling, hilarious humanity that comes about from just letting your cameras roll. It's incredible. I find you were saying that the population is mired in sort of city council meetings. It's like, but that's a theme across Wiseman's career is city council meetings and like bureaucracy. He seems to love bureaucracy as like the clockwork of America in a way.
Yeah.
How the little tiny baby steps of decisions get made.
I always get the sense that he's waiting for someone to snap.
Yeah.
In every time. It happens in Jackson Heights too, that these people are incredibly angry about, I think it's a parking lot. Or not a parking lot, even just like stripes, what color the stripes are going to be or how they're going to lay them out. It's just this thing, the minutiae of humanity.
Yes.
Right? How we can't agree on anything.
Yes.
Is the thing that I think fascinates him.
Yeah.
And then somehow you get a hospital, where everybody is actively working towards the thing that they should all be working for, which is to keep people comfortable and alive.
Yeah.
And I think his micro-macro thing where he'll just marvel at these weird insecurities or tics that a person will have, but still manage to function and help people or not help people, depending on the institution they're in.
Yeah.
It's this film, everyone is just so placid and patient that maybe that's it. There isn't even the promise of conflict.
But there's the tiny ripples. There's one of the members of town council he's got a mustache and sort of thinning hair, and he is like clearly so mad. Yeah. And he was like barely contained himself when I think when someone says like, now I don't mean to talk too much or something, or I don't mean to speak out of turn, and he sort of goes like, and you get these little tiny ripples that I think in a town of 2,000 people, those are big things. Those are they make bigger splashes. There's a great scene where great scene. I mean, nothing happens, but it's a town council meeting, and I think it's so great where this woman is trying to trying to convince the council to vote against the building of an entrance into a subdivision, because she feels that subdivision is responsible for what she calls the strife in the community. They get the cops called out to them too many times per day, and you start to just see this like this thinly veiled racism that's like that's driving one part of the town, one portion of the population. And then you see someone, and even a couple people, like self-correct that. And there's something nice about that, where she said, where they say, no, we're not going to do that, because also in that community are the volunteer firefighters who are like doing great work. And like, yes, the cops get called, but they also get called to other parts of the town. And I found that kind of stuff so so important in their smallness. Like they're not the flip outs that most documentarians are looking for. But I think in Wiseman's survey, I don't even know how long he was there, but in his survey of the town, it's like that's the big thing. That's the kind of big thing that happens here, and it's just a smaller thing.
Yeah, little moments of understanding that you might miss,
especially
if you're looking for larger emotional beats, which has never been his thing.
It's never been his thing, but they're there.
I was going to say, in this one, he lets the townsfolk come to them themselves. Like the funeral is the one that I was thinking of, where he clearly chooses. It opens with Genesis and it closes with a funeral of a woman who I think 76 years old. She's lived a full life, and it starts like every funeral speech that I've ever squirmed through, where you just get a bunch of generic homilies. Like, well, good person, well liked. No one can say a bad thing about her. Well, no, it's her funeral. No one would. But then it evolves. It becomes almost like a revival meeting, but very calmly and quietly he escalates the tenor of it all, and it becomes a quest for grace in his eulogy. As he starts to talk about larger things and eternal life, and how, what was it? There are no wheelchairs. In heaven, there are no wheelchairs. It's a perfected place. There are no wheelchairs. There are no walkers. No one's sick. And I just hit me really hard that most of the people in that space are the dead woman's age or thereabouts. They're her friends, and they're listening to this as a promise. And then it hit further that it's like, oh yeah, these people believe this stuff. Like they're not cynical big city heretics like me who, embraced atheism in their teens. They're people who probably still show up for this and believe.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing that I want to watch the movie again to see if it's running through the whole film, if there's this undercurrent. There's a wedding where the bride and groom build this very silly, I think objectively silly religious statement, the Unity Cross.
Yes.
Which represents something to them.
Yes.
But to me, felt like one of those things you do at a mega church because everyone's doing it, like an arts and crafts project. And
it's an add-on on the menu that you can select.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, let's go. Let's level up. Let's do that. And I want to look at it again and watch their faces closely. I want to see if they believe it.
Yeah. And you don't know what reaction shots he's using are applying to the moment that you're witnessing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you know that he's choosing them. And so one thing I was watching was reaction shots, and there are just as many polite smiles as there are completely bored faces. There's a scene of a band recital, and they're playing the Simpsons theme song, and it's a full house but of really bored looking people. And there are similarly kind of like sleepy faces during the eulogy, and there is this feeling of like they do believe it, but like not everybody, and maybe not this way, and I do agree that there'd be people in the audience who would look at the Unity Cross and think like that's corny. So I would never do that or whatever. But I do get the sense that there's a very strong undercurrent of age in the whole movie. It's just an old town, and it's an old way of life.
Right. That was the other. I think. Yeah, and again, Frederick Wiseman, who is an old man himself.
Yeah.
There was a moment when, that's The Simpsons. Does he even know what The Simpsons is? And then I thought, yeah, it's been around for 30 years. Of course he knows what The Simpsons is. But I think it's supposed to be, I mean, when it shows up in the film, it's like, is that a reference? Is he referring to this place as a Springfield, as a sort of an isolated hamlet, the same way The Simpsons treats their own town?
I mean, they're doing it to themselves.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. If they're embracing it, then doesn't that mean they identify on some level with it? Or at least that it's comforting now because anything old is familiar and friendly.
Mm.
But what the film keeps suggesting, I think, is that this is the imagined way of life. That when people say "Make America Great Again," this is what they're talking about. You know, like a small, peaceful place where nothing ever goes wrong. But if you look a little closer, everybody's struggling. People are getting old. If there is a politics to the film, I think that's it. Like these are Trump voters who are already living the thing that Trump thinks he's going to give them, or that they think Trump is going to give them.
Yes. Yeah, that's an interesting. Yeah, but that's an interesting read. Like it's as like perhaps like life is great for them in the sense that they have a lot of quiet and quietude and like not much to do besides go and bid on a giant tractor or like a thresher or whatever. And yeah, this idea maybe this does kind of tie into this eulogy of like heaven's a perfected place where you know, we don't have to do all that much, and there's beautiful sky everywhere and manicured lawns and pizza rolls from Big Dog Pizza.
Giant ass pizza rolls. Those things, I never want to eat one of those now. Now that I've seen the
I didn't know they
made,
existed.
Yeah.
But now I did want to try. I wanted to try a bite. I did.
I saw a thing about a new kind of stuffed crust pizza where they stuff it with both cheese and pepperoni. So it's
yes, I did see this somewhere
pizza stuffed
too.
with pizza.
That's right.
And again, you have to have time to come up with something like this. But
you don't need much time to come up with
the end
pizzas.
of civilization. It's like, what else do we need? What else can we possibly have for pleasure? Oh, I know, more of the thing that I'm eating, but in a different shape.
Yeah, I mean, deep dish pizza, in fairness, is pizza on top of pizza.
That's fair. Yeah, that's true. And again, it sets a bar that we can never clear as a species. As a culture.
What sets a bar?
Deep dish pizza.
Oh, like, I see. Yes,
what else can you do? You're going to stack another one on top of it.
Yeah.
Now
You're
that
just
I've said that, Pizza Hut's going to do it. And you wonder why medical costs are so high. It's there, but the fact that it is handmade, that we actually watch the process of the pizza roll. I'm going to make a metaphor out of the pizza rolls.
Please.
But it is sort of. It's devotional, right? Like it's the thing that Wiseman does is capture people at work, capture people in their lives.
Yeah.
And I can mock the pizza rolls all I want for being these long, creepy-looking tubes, but they are feeding people. They are sustaining people, and they're making people happy.
Yeah.
So here we are with this alien culture that I've dropped into with no context and forced to find my way. But yeah, the people are doing things that seem to be generally helpful and positive for the community. Even the veterinarian is clearly fulfilling a function with that amputation.
Yes.
And they're not doing it cruelly. The dog is cared for. We get to watch as the dog kind of goes under.
Yeah.
And it's loving in a weird way.
That it's done through an embrace.
Yeah,
that
intern is helping the dog.
Yeah.
And it's just, I have this bizarre. Well, I mean, it's not bizarre. I have this thing about watching animal violence, obviously, because the dog, like dogs in movies. Kate, my wife, can't abide dog violence. Even though it's always fictional. We won't watch a movie with real dog violence.
No.
But my argument has always been like, oh, the dog's fine. The dog's at the craft service table. The dog is having the best day.
Right.
But I think there's some part of the human brain with a lot of people, I'm sure it comes up with myself too, where if you're watching an animal or a child, you're not fully believing that the animal or the child is cool with what's happening.
Yeah, because how could they be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Baby Yoda, fine, it's a puppet. Baby Yoda falls down, Baby Yoda's going to be fine.
I'm fine with Baby Yoda torture. I'm fine with that.
Sure. Yeah. Apparently it gets you banned from Twitter. But
yeah, right.
It's one of those situations where I'm watching this clinical footage of an amputation, and I found it absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
I wasn't disgusted. I wasn't horrified. I was just like, oh, that's how that happens.
Yeah.
And that's Frederick Wiseman, right? Like he found a thing I'd never seen before.
Yeah, because he floats like a ghost, and there are like he will not hesitate to disturb you like to no end. He sort of started his career by disturbing everybody, shocking everybody, and he will not hold back from anything like that. And so it's just put right in the middle. You don't get warning really, and that has always been a sort of like representation of how serious, like it overlays a seriousness onto the other things around it.
Yeah,
it's like, oh well, yeah, like the guy dealing with spray painting pigs there's a seriousness to both of those things. It's just this one involves scalpels, sutures.
Yeah, this is something that I was going to ask. You're familiar enough with his work, you've seen enough of his films that I can actually ask you. How do you feel about the transition from film to HD video? Because I had trouble adjusting to that when he first did it.
When did it happen?
It was around.
Because I'm thinking like of like The Store would still be film.
Yeah, I'm actually
in the 80s.
It was around like the late 90s, if I remember correctly, and it was not HD right away. There was a transition.
There was a sort of SD time.
Yeah. Because now I'm adjusted to it. We see so much stuff in HD video that it no longer.
Yeah. And I think, we collectively learned how to shoot on it in a way that looks beautiful now.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, was it domestic violence?
Oh.
Or was that shot for television?
Maybe Domestic Violence 2. Which is funny to think of him as making sequels. Yes. But I watched Domestic Violence 2 pretty recently and had no trouble with it.
Well, now too we accept video as
we do, right?
It's gone back to
its own aesthetic,
valid and archival in a way. Like when
that's
you're
right.
watching video, it no longer feels like you're watching a soap opera.
That's
now
right.
It's history.
Yeah, now that is reserved only for True Motion, where when you see that, you think, now I feel like I want to stop watching movies forever.
You were at the Canada's Top 10 launch. You noticed that, right?
I did notice that.
I was sitting there just thinking, I should just fix every single one of these damn things.
I was looking there's no remotes around.
There's one. He's like, they're all Samsungs. One remote would do it. We just get through.
This is a film event.
Yeah. And the 8K images are gorgeous right up until you realize they're floating on like a liquid thing that is not.
Yeah.
You can feel every single filmmaker cringing.
Yeah. Well, I told Kaz, I went over to him, I was like, I think, is your film shot in True Motion? Because it's being displayed that way. Yeah.
It's such a heartbreaker. I mean, people will see the films properly, but
they will.
Hopefully. They'll fix their TV. Fix your TVs, people. But the Wiseman effect, the video that he shoots in, now just feels normal again.
Yes.
Like film gave things an authenticity. The 16 millimeter grain right away tells you. Titicut Follies and High School, those are lit like life, I guess, because they just don't have the time to make it prettier.
Yeah, and then I remember, we both remember when the video was introduced as a sort of high-end tool, it was disappointing because it felt cheap, and then now it just has a historic feel, and so it's to get back to your question, I feel fine about it because ultimately we worked through it. There's really nothing that I look back on and think that he hurt his own process by doing. Now that we're past it,
I imagine the speed of playback would be like he could cut a film the same day, right? If he knows what he wants. What he got,
video.
he can with HD, with digital, you can you can speed the process up. I mean, it would have taken him, although it didn't, he was always really industrious. It would have taken him longer to cut on film, but now he's still just cranking them out.
Yeah.
I think what changed with video, like it felt to me that with video, length stopped being an issue. He could make longer.
Yes.
He could just linger and luxuriate in stuff.
True.
Which works for and against.
That's right.
The experiences of the film, like Domestic Violence at 3 hours is punishing.
Yes.
But I would assume that at 110 minutes, it wouldn't be as effective, right? I mean, if you cut stuff and you don't live with these people at the same stretch of time, then it does dilute the effect. I mean,
Yeah.
Monrovia is the shortest movie in
a long time.
10 years maybe?
Yeah, kind of why I chose it also. Another reason was for rewatchability.
Right.
Because I still feel daunted by the longer ones to even get into them. I think the ones I've seen are the shortest ones, and the ones that remain are the longest.
Well, Jackson Heights is almost 3 hours.
Yeah. I still haven't seen that.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, no, I hear
I mean,
it's great.
it is. I think it's my favorite of his films.
Yeah.
And part of that is just my affinity for New York
Yeah.
in general. But it is a movie about everything. Like it's just every single this sounds dumb, but the way I was explaining it to people when it came out was there is that scene in Spider-Man Homecoming where a criminal gives up some information because he likes the sandwich store that Spider-Man tried to save. It's like good sandwiches there. And it's like that movie is in Jackson Heights.
Yeah.
Everyone knows the world they live in, and they're all cool with it. Like they're all perfectly willing to put aside whatever personal thing is going on to make the place work. Mm-hmm. And I get that about his attraction to the material, Wiseman, telling stories about mechanisms, like the mechanism of society.
Yeah.
And it's here too in Monrovia.
True.
But much calmer.
Much calmer, and I think it's no accident that like in Jackson Heights is so much more probably imbued with love because he lives there.
Yeah, it's his world.
And I think he, again, this idea of like the statement being there despite the absence of statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think his perspective and his love for things shines through, and dislike for things shines through.
I think he wants, even now, to know people better. I think ultimately that's why he makes everything. Mm-hmm. He wants the faces in the New York Library in Ex Libris. He wants to show you the people working at terminals using computer time in, I think it's a Staten Island branch or in the Bronx. There's this one place that just opened up a computer lab, and you see this incredible range of people from, largely working class, I suspect, which is why they're using computers in the library. But you get the sense that these people have come from everywhere, and they're just in this space at once.
Yeah.
And that's the world. That's the world of this film, and that's the world that the library is set up to serve. And he just wants to follow them home. Mm-hmm. But he's already created this restriction for himself that he can't leave the library. Yeah. And I hope I'm half as curious as he is when I'm that age.
I know. And I think that's a great place to end, because that is why I continue to like him so much, is that he's always had that, and I've always shared that, and have such admiration for someone who can bring that aspiration to life, just the desire to watch people and learn about them.
Yeah. So that does bring us to the final question. Like, what, if anything, of this film, or I guess of Wiseman's career, have you been able to use in your own work? Or is it just a general curiosity, or have you actually managed to?
Well, I mean, so much of performance, like every scene for me has something of either myself or someone I love or someone I hate, and it feels so much more true than any acting. And because of the contextless vibe of a Wiseman, you can project all your own history onto these little nuances that you see people do. So yeah, all the time, little tiny things like you can just take a script that you're thinking about and how to do things, and you can watch all of these real people just live their lives, and these little twists and little behaviors and tics can be so valuable for any kind of moment that you want to use. So yeah, I use it all the time.
Is there one thing you keep coming back to? A character, or not a character, but a subject or a feeling?
I
was trying to come up with a connection to the 20th century, and it is not happening.
I see.
Anything specific. That film is, because that film is so unbelievable.
It's so mannered that I don't think I would be pulling from there. There's not something that I keep returning to. But like, I guess to just return to this, this figure at the town council who like, he can't restrain his own passive aggression. Yeah. Like when I see things like that, which a lot of people just don't care about, they think nothing, they just feel that nothing is happening. to me, it's like, well, that's in me, this feeling, and like I've seen my father do that or whatever, and so I don't know, like that's an example of the kind of thing that I would take from, but it's it's not what I keep going back to because it's not applicable in all situations, but
Sure.
But that's the kind of thing, little human tics that are just so much more fleshed out in a fly on the wall environment than any kind of fictionalized creation.
Yeah, things that make the fictional real.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, things that connect us to the character.
Yeah.
I was thinking about Great, Great, Great. We spoke last week. It's like I finally got every cast member. This is it now.
This is it.
And how so much of that movie should be absurd and isn't because it's so kind of wrenchingly true. It's honest in a way. And those of you listening who don't know what we're talking about, you should go and find Great, Great, Great. I will make sure to include a link to where you can find it at the end of the episode. It's just this very small story about people struggling with what they want and who they are. Mm-hmm. And that is effectively everything and everyone. Like specificity becomes universal in a way that's I found really powerful. And then I was putting it together with other films, other documentaries, because the realism of that movie and the emotional realism, the honesty, and the fact that the camera just doesn't flinch from what's going on, people who just, who love each other but can't talk to each other, is something that's so, I mean, it feels like a documentary in its moment. And I was thinking about Marriage Story too, where it just hits that peak where a character decides to not hold back and not be a good person for 2 seconds and just absolutely destroys every possibility of future happiness, or at least it thinks he has.
Yeah.
And this is the stuff that isn't in Wiseman's documentaries, but when you're talking about somebody's passive aggression and you realize, I know what that is, I know who that is, I know that, I recognize that in myself, but of course, this is the version you present or the version he presents to the rest of council, right? The beauty of drama is that we get to watch people not disguising themselves.
Yes.
And Wiseman is all about the versions of ourselves we present publicly.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing I'm trying to argue at, where when you get a sense that there is a much bigger world than the thing you're seeing in the moment, that's the province of really powerful drama, but it's also Wiseman's project, right? Because I think by the end of his career, whether he's done now or whether he has 3 more movies in him, I think you will be able to sort of line up the pieces and you'll have all of America. Like you'll get the world if he does it right. That feels like the mission. Yeah. It's the guy talking about his operation and then someone else mentioning someone he knows with a gallbladder. It's like, well, maybe the thing they're doing now is going to reverberate through in Jackson Heights retroactively, or there'll be some other part of another doc that leads in. And I just feel like he's capturing so much and giving us so much that he's building that tapestry.
I fully agree.
That felt like a really wide swing, but I think I landed it.
I think you did, yeah. To look at these forward-facing behaviors and be able to exaggerate them and to take that real thing that makes you lean forward and dramatize that, to me is like one of my main goals. But
just to be more real.
Yeah, but to do this thing that you're talking about of like the world beneath, so that you're pulled as opposed to pushed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean that should be the goal, right? Like to bring people closer. I want to lean forward. I want to get into that screen.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
And sometimes it lets me. And sometimes it doesn't.
That's right.
And I'm not going to see Cats tonight for that very reason.
I'm also going to skip Cats.
I'm going to have to see it eventually. I just know I am. I wonder what Wiseman would think of it. Because, it's as hyper-real as The Quest is, it's clearly not real at all.
I wonder what he thinks of any movie. I don't know what he watches, if anything.
Yeah, he's never made a doc about movies, has he? He's never really gone towards the industry.
Yeah, he loves dance.
Yeah, that's true.
But
has he done one about television? He hasn't. News gathering or something like that?
Not particularly.
No.
Like, yeah, not even like newspapers.
I wonder. That'll be his last film. It'll be about Netflix. It'll just be a camera pointed at a television set.
Yeah, he'll have a Netflix budget. Yeah.
It'll just be someone, oh God, no, that's what it'll be. It'll be the menu screen. It'll be someone clicking through tabs for 5 hours. And it will be riveting. God damn it.
You know who I feel, this is a total tangent now, but someone who has taken the Wiseman spirit in new directions is the filmmaker behind Hale County. Did you see Hale County?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This morning, this evening?
This afternoon, this evening? Something like that? This morning, this evening.
You're probably right.
Which I just was one of my favorite films of that year. Was just like, and I don't know why, but the Netflix menu reminded me of that because it made me think of like, yeah, you would see the Netflix menu, but in the background you would hear this conversation that would somehow be more revealing of like what was going on. And there's like this brilliant shot of smoke rising through branches, and in the background you hear a passerby say, "Why are you taking this photo?" And there's a whole discussion about why they're taking this photo. And it's just such a, it to me feels so much in that spirit of like just document the real and the excitement of life will come through.
Yeah, it's that quotidian thing, right? The word that everyone uses in any Wiseman review, the sense of ordinary life unfolding. But he makes it more than ordinary just by being there. I think that's his thing. Like he knows what to watch, he knows what to show us, but he knows to be there in the first place. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Hale County does that too. It just immerses you in this place that you've never been or that I've never been to, and makes you feel like you've lived there for a bit. Yeah.
I think A.O. Scott calls him the greatest living American poet or something like that. And
I can see it.
Yeah.
I still want to watch that Netflix movie.
Which one?
The one that he makes. Whatever the Wiseman Netflix film would be.
Oh, exactly, yeah. Oh, yeah. Wiseman's Netflix. Yeah, that'll be great.
My thanks to Dan Beirne, who you can see in the 20th Century, playing in Montreal and Winnipeg right now, in Edmonton at the Metro Cinema on January 24th, 26th, and 29th, and in Toronto at the Royal on January 27th and the Paradise on February 12th. Thanks also to Angie Power. She knows what she did. You can find Dan on Twitter at Dan Beirne, all one word, and if you have a library card, you can stream Monrovia, Indiana for free on Canopy, along with most of Frederick Wiseman's other films. Or you can order a Blu-ray or DVD directly from the Zipporah Films website. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com. You can also find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, S-E-M-Cast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. Our shiny new theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it or the show in general, say so. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or wherever you've been enjoying us. Every little bit helps, it truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network. They're pretty good. Oh, and congratulations to Christy Wilson Cairns on her Oscar nomination for Best Original Screenplay for 1917. Do the podcast, win a prize. It's just science. Thanks for listening. See you next week.